What is going on, guys, and welcome to the Rise and Fall of Supercam Part 2. With the first overall pick in the 2011 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers would select Cam Newton. He signed a 4-year deal worth over $22 million. During the preseason, Newton was behind Jimmy Clausen, with the Panthers picked in the second round of the 2010 NFL Draft. Before the first game of the regular season, Newton was named a starter, and in his debut against the Arizona Cardinals, he did not disappoint. Despite losing to the Cardinals 28-21, Newton showed flashes of brilliance, completing 24 passes for 422 yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, and also added a rushing touchdown. The Panthers would trot to a 6-10 record, but the future is bright in Carolina. Newton would finish with 310 completions for 4,051 yards, 21 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, and on the ground, he rushed for 706 yards and added 14 rushing touchdowns. He would go on to win Offensive Rookie of the Year and made it to his first Pro Bowl. From 2012 to 2014, Cam was still balling out, but despite those appearances, he did not make it far in the playoffs. Despite the Panthers' success, no one saw this coming from Cam. On June 2nd, 2015, the Panthers agreed to a 5-year, $103.8 million contract extension. This season was like no other. And as an NFL fan and as a Cam fan, it was fun to watch. Cam would lead the Panthers to a 15-1 record and finish the year with 296 completions and passing for 3,817 yards with 35 touchdown passes and 10 interceptions. He also added 636 yards on the ground with 10 rushing touchdowns. With that kind of year, Cam would go on to win the NFL MVP, and he wasn't done here. The Panthers would clinch the 1 seed in the postseason and would play the Seattle Seahawks in the divisional round. They would avenge their loss to the Seahawks the previous year in the divisional round, winning 31-24. Newton would complete 16 passes for 161 yards and 1 passing touchdown. In the NFC Championship game, the Panthers would beat the Cardinals in a one-sided affair, 49-15. Cam would finish the game with 19 completions for 335 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and threw 1 interception. He also added 10 carries for 47 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. For the first time since 2003, the Carolina Panthers are headed to the Super Bowl. The Panthers are so close. They are 1 win away from cementing themselves as world champions. But before they got to the mountaintop, they had one team in their way, the Denver Broncos. This Broncos defense is the real deal with players like Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware. They had just defeated the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, and they were looking to help their quarterback, Peyton Manning, ride into the sunset as a world champion. The Panthers went into Super Bowl 50 as a 5.5-point favorite, and most people believed that this Panthers team was going to achieve the impossible and win their first ever Super Bowl title. The game started strong for the Broncos as they drove down the field, but had to settle for a 34-yard field goal to get the first points on the board at 3-0. After back-to-back punts, the Panthers began to muster up some offense with a 24-yard pass to Jericho Cotchery, but the catch was ruled incomplete after a challenge. When you look at this, you can make your assumptions here, but to me, that looked like a catch. A couple of plays later, Von Miller knocked the ball out of Newton's hands, which led to Malik Jackson recovering the ball in the end zone. The Broncos scored the first touchdown of the game. The Panthers would settle down and cap a 9-play, 73-yard drive with a Jonathan Stewart 1-yard touchdown. It cut the deficit to 10-7. A 61-yard punt return by Broncos receiver Jordan Norwood would put the Broncos at the Panthers 14, but the Panthers defense held them in check and they had to settle for a field goal to make it 13-7. Back-to-back drives for both offenses wouldn't lead to any points. With 11 seconds to go, Newton would get sacked by DeMarcus Ware, ending the first half with the Broncos in the lead. A 45-yard pass to Ted Ginn Jr., the longest pass play of the game, would set up the Panthers in good field position. They would try to settle for the field goal, but kicker Graham Gano missed and hit the right upright on a 44-yard attempt. The Broncos got the ball back, and Manning completed back-to-back passes to Emmanuel Sanders for 25 yards and 22. It would set up a McManus 33-yard field goal, which increased the Broncos' lead to 16-7. The Panthers are back on offense, and Newton would complete a pass to Corey Brown for 42 yards. The Panthers could not get any points on the drive as Newton's pass bounced off the hands of Ginn and led to an interception by TJ Ward. The score would remain 16-7 at the end of the third. By the fourth, the Broncos were at the Panthers 41. On the next possession, Coney Ely would knock the ball out of Manning's hands, leading to the Panthers recovering at the 50. The Panthers would drive but settle for a Gano 39-yard field goal, making the score 16-10. With 4:51 to go, unfortunately, this play would turn the tides for the game.
Rushing four, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
On 3rd and 9, Miller would strip Newton again for the ball, and Ward would recover it at the 4-yard line. After the game, Newton would receive criticism for not diving onto the ball, which would be stuck with Cam forever. The Broncos would take advantage of the turnover with a 2-yard touchdown from C.J. Anderson and a pass from Manning to Benny Fowler for the 2-point conversion. The Broncos would win 24-10 and become Super Bowl champs. Newton would finish the game with 18 completed passes for 265 yards and no touchdown passes, along with 1 interception. Unfortunately for the Carolina Panthers, their magical season came to an end. The Panthers lost in Super Bowl 50, but this team was still in win now mode and wouldn't stop here. At least we thought they would, until the Panthers finished 6-10 and missed the playoffs. Newton would go on to have one of his worst seasons of his career, completing 270 passes for 3,509 yards with 19 touchdown passes and 14 interceptions. He would also add 359 yards on the ground with 5 rushing touchdowns. In 2017, the Panthers improved, and they were trying to redeem themselves from their disappointing season the previous year. They went 11-5 and would clinch a wildcard spot. Newton would post better numbers that year, completing 219 passes for 3,320 yards with 22 touchdowns and throwing 16 interceptions. He would also add 754 yards on the ground with 6 rushing touchdowns. They played the division rivals, the New Orleans Saints, but fell short in a heartbreaking loss, 31-26. Newton would complete 24 passes for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interceptions. Newton played a pretty good game. The Saints were just too much for the Panthers, but you can't blame it all on Cam. I'd also like to add that the Saints have beaten the Panthers 3 times that year. In 2018, Newton had a good year with the Panthers, showing us flashes of his 2015 MVP season. Newton would start in 14 games, but would miss the last 2 due to a shoulder injury. But the blame can't all be on Cam. The Panthers would go 7-9. In 14 games, he completed 320 passes for 3,395 yards with 24 touchdowns and threw 13 interceptions. He would also add 488 yards on the ground with 4 rushing touchdowns. Going into the most painful year, in my opinion, 2019 is where it all went down for Cam. In a preseason game against the Patriots, Cam Newton hurt his left foot on the Panthers' 3rd drive. The Panthers medical staff said that he may have dodged a bullet, but this is, unfortunately, the downfall of Cam Newton. I just didn't see the same player anymore. In their 2nd game of the season, the Panthers would lose to their division rival, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 20-14 on a goal line stand. Usually, Cam would receive the ball in short yard situations, but that wasn't the case, as on 4th and 1, Bucs corner Vernon Hargreaves pushed running back Christian McCaffrey out of bounds to end the game. Media outlets all over were questioning why Newton never got the ball in that situation. When you have a 6'5", 245-pound quarterback, that's the guy you go to. And Cam, even in his college days, this is what they would do. They would just put him at the 1, and they would just go for that goal line dive. The Panthers would go on to shut Cam down for the rest of the season with a foot injury. And on March 24th, 2020, the Panthers would surprisingly release Cam after 9 years with the organization. The former #1 overall pick and NFL MVP was out. It was the end of an era in Carolina. It was sad to see one of the more exciting players in the game receive the axe from the city and team he sacrificed his blood, sweat, and tears for. He would sign with the Patriots in 2020, but would finish the year with a 7-8 record and miss the playoffs. Now, I will say, Cam, for 2 weeks of the season, did have COVID. And before he had COVID, he was actually doing really good. I think after he caught COVID, everything just went downhill for him. And I think that if he didn't catch COVID, I think he would have had a better year and he would have posted better stats. Newton would complete 242 passes for 2,657 yards with 8 passing touchdowns and 10 interceptions. He also added 529 yards on the ground with 12 rushing touchdowns. In the 2021 NFL Draft, the Patriots would then select Mac Jones with the 15th overall pick. And then on September 10th, 2021, I was surprised to see Cam cut by the Patriots. Then, one of the more interesting things happened that year. On November 11th, 2021, Newton signed a 1-year deal to return home to the Carolina Panthers. It was great to see him score his first rushing touchdown with the Panthers since October 28, 2018 against the Cardinals. It was great to see Newton back with the Panthers, and it made me feel like we were back in 2015. Unfortunately, it didn't get better from here. Despite what the internet says and all the memes that they have, I mean, come on. It was not cool to make fun of Cam after he said he was back, and then a few weeks later after he had the starts that he had, the performances that he had. I just didn't like how the internet was just clowning him for all of that. In 5 starts for the Panthers, though, Newton would complete 66 passes for 676 yards with 3 passing touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He would also add 211 yards on the ground with 4 rushing touchdowns. The question to ask is whether the Panthers will bring Cam back for another year. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they did, considering that Cam did not have enough time in the offense, but it wouldn't surprise me if they also cut him during training camp. Will the Panthers bring him back is a question itself, but never forget about the player who was larger than life, Super Cam. All right, guys, and that's the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Now, I will say that when I was filming this from 2016 till the end, it was kind of painful, to be honest with you, just to see how Cam's career went down. But overall, I mean, you never know if he does get another chance, if the Panthers do bring him back for another season. It's just kind of up in the air right now. But not to take too long with this outro, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm out.